Okay. All right. So let's get into it then. We're going to start with an overview of the case and the organization. So I'm going to pass this over to Sepideh.
Okay, yes. So speaking about the AIs, yeah, it sounds very interesting. And now I see that, like more people are using it compared to a year ago when we had the webinars. But as an OD practitioners, when you think about, integrating AI to your organization, I'm pretty sure you'll get a lot of questions about, okay, how it will work, how it will impact our organization, how it will impact our cost, and we'll try to help you in this, presentation to get answers of some of these questions and have a better impact in your organization as an OD practitioner for AI integration. So this case example, it was actually just to give a little bit about the organization. The organization was actually it was like from the mother, organization was actually a franchisor company, which they decided to kind of like initiate a second company as a SaaS company, which was, designing a platform for the first franchisor. And they were, thinking about using that platform as an AI capable platform for all of the organizations with franchisor or franchising system. So that they had a really good potentials for using that their data and their operations for coming up with such a modular platform. So the insight led to the creation of a second company, as I mentioned, and then at that time they had one client. Can we go to the next slide?
Before we move forward, I wanted to just sort of look
Oh
at the
yeah.
organization we were looking at really quickly. So as Sepideh pointed out, we were brought on board to a SaaS company. So this is a company that was building a platform for use with franchise businesses, and they currently had one pilot client. The interesting thing about this, so when we think about it from an organization perspective, so as you can see on the right, there was a CEO of this the franchisor organization. So any franchise, like think about UPS store, for example. This is a really good example. A UPS store. The UPS is the company, but there are individual franchisees that own the UPS store locations. So this franchise organization had a CEO and a headquarters sort of organization, and then locations that were owned by franchisees. And they also had locations that they owned themselves. So from an org perspective, we have one CEO for the franchise organization, and then you have the franchisee locations and the owned and run and operated locations. Now, the CEO also wanted to create a platform. So all these franchises were using a best practice platform that existed in the marketplace. It did not necessarily do everything they wanted it to do. So he had this great idea that he was going to create his own platform. So he started a secondary company, this SaaS organization that we were brought into, to create this platform. Okay.
Now let's briefly walk through an overview of our project. So the client's existing platform wasn't meeting their essential business need, but it was initially it wasn't clear to them why is that and why it's not working, and they had modified around many times, but their franchisees and their staffs were still complaining and saying it's not working, it's just a burden to us. But they would see that potential in their platform. Even though their current software wasn't highly rated in the market, it was expensive, and it didn't address all of their requirements, and users consistently struggled with the performance and ease of use. They also reported inconsistent information across the dashboard, challenges of integrating the software with the day-to-day operations. Additionally, the company wanted to add AI capabilities, but the current platform wasn't ready in terms of design, data structures, or user experience. We saw opportunities here to introduce advanced features like better CRM tools, improve analytics, and a stronger user experience and automation to streamline the task. Next, we identified key pain points that were impacting people within the organization. These included misalignment operations, workflow that created frustrations and inefficiency, and a lack of useful data to guide decisions, unclear way of measuring performance, and uncertainty among the leaders about how best move this forward and, turning that second company to a successful startup. So finally, it was important to note some expectations and limitation around this project. This was a student-led initiative, project over 3 months for my doctorate program. And it was a unpaid consultancy program. So one of the things that we did was we gave them a full roadmap and stage-by-stage design from the assessment to the final stage of the change management. But we could only, support them throughout the first phase of our design. Can we go to the next slide?
Sure.
Okay. And before we dive into the assessments, just, we want to shift your understanding about a little bit about the AI. And that's one of the things that, Rachel and I, during the different conferences that we attended and different, conversations we had with the professionals, we learned that people have a wrong understanding of AI. So people think that, okay, AI is like mimicking human intelligence, so it thinks and it does things, and it's kind of like a machine human. But we need to be mindful about that. So AI is actually a technology made by human that enables the computers to do certain tasks and problem solving and other cognitive function that a human being usually do. But it's been designed to, do those, functions a little bit faster and use different reasoning, combine everyone, system. So that's why you think, okay, it's very advanced, but at the end of the day, it is a technology made by human and limited to the human decision. We thought that we need to kind of like introduce few important terminologies and concept that as an OD practitioner you need to know, and also it will help you to understand this presentation better. So I will start with the first one. The first thing is machine learning. So when we think about the machine learning, is actually when the computers learn from the data to make a prediction or decision without being directly programmed. So think about it as, Netflix suggestions based on the movies and series that you watch. After a while it recommends based on your behavior and your selection of the programs. So it learns your patterns and your system, so it can give you a suggestion, but it cannot reason in, when we when we talk about the machine learning, we're not saying that, okay, machine can also make that thinking process itself. So that would be a little bit advanced, system, which is called deep learning. I'm pretty sure you have heard of it. That's when the advanced AIs and the advanced technology comes in to make algorithm out of the data that it will have. So I want to emphasize on the word of data. Without any data, there will be no AI. So it is data and how you process the datas. That's the AI. So the technology that's been designed to process the datas. And it is very important, and we will, dig into it a little bit more, that how you would present and how you will design those datas. So next slide, please. With that being said, there are different types of AI, and we did not include all of them, but we included the ones that we thought it's important for you as an OD practitioners to know. So generative AI is pretty simple. I'm pretty sure everyone by now know how to use it or what it is. It's an AI that creates content. You can simply talk to it. It's a chat GPT, or maybe in your organization or from I don't know if you're subscribing to different platforms, there are AI chatbots that you can talk to and ask questions. Those are the generative AI. Next one will be retrieval augmented generative AI. and RAG. And this is an important one. As an OD practitioner, you need to pay a special focus to this one because this is where you can give all of your PDFs, your datas, and your articles, and then ask questions from those. So you specify a certain, range of datas, and then you ask a question, and the question will be answered only from those articles or from those PDFs that you assign to the system. That's why we call it RAG. It's kind of an isolated system. Um, and then next one would be the agentic AI, which is, as Irving explained, this is a full autonomous AI, so it can book you an event. It can, depending on, how you program that AI, it can do this. It can do certain tasks without being, directed or managed by a human being, and it will just be, purchased by the company, and certain tasks supposed to get done by that agent, and you're just supposed to see the results, not how it, got that result, or you cannot guide it through that system. And lastly, and perhaps the most importantly, which can help you to release a little bit of that stress that, okay, will AI get over my business or not, is the augmented AI, which is a human-centered AI. This is technically has been designed to work with you as a human being and as professional operators to help to make your job easier. So just, one of them that, can help you to understand it better. I'm pretty sure you have heard in the news that, okay, there are AIs that, works as a diagnosis tool, or kind of like puts a lot of um, clients or patients' data together and help the researchers understand better, okay, how are those data, um, patterns, or how does their algorithm look like, and you as a human being and as a doctor or professional make decisions based on the outcome of those AIs. Or it could be an AI that you work throughout the day and throughout your operation and guide that AI to get your job easier, make your job easier, and then improve the efficiency of your work. So those are the augmented AI, and you will see a lot of augmented AIs because not because not because the organization wants it, but I'm pretty sure the governments are actually coming up with some policies that, okay, you need to include augmented AI because the world is not ready to set aside all of the workers and say, go home, bye. So yeah, I'm done with this slide. The next one, please.
Yeah. So thank you, Sepideh. So these are different ways that your organization could be incorporating different types of AI into the operations. And so it comes in different forms. As an org designer, as an operating model designer, one of the things that I like to start with, and if you are an org designer too, we like to think about what is the work first. So when we're designing an organization. So as I'm thinking about organizational capabilities, I'm looking at what are the specific things that AI can do. So when we think about organizational capabilities, we're really talking about the work that occurs within the organization. Previously, we were talking about what is the work of humans and what are the tools and processes that they use to do that work. AI can now, as we talked about with agentic AI, do work itself. And so this is some of the work that AI can do. So as Sepideh talked about machine learning, there's also natural language processing. So understanding human connection. If you've used, for example, like SurveyMonkey recently, you can pay for a pro account and get sentiment analysis. Right. So that's how they're incorporating those things. Computer vision. So making machines see. Does anybody, if some people, if you've used the Ray-Ban Meta, for example, like those, like, asking your glasses, what am I looking at? So computer vision. There's also what we talk predictive analytics. So predictive analytics has been something that's been around for a really long time, but this is something when you think about AI looking at patterns of data, doing that predictive analytics work very quickly in a matter of seconds versus what it might take some of us to do in days. And then recommendation systems, personalized suggestions, just like the Netflix piece, generative AI, robotic process automation. So when we think about automating routine tasks, and that could be physical, that could be tasks that are done digitally, and then anomaly detection, so identifying unusual patterns. So as you think about what AI does, it really deals in data. It deals in patterns and algorithms, and it can also detect when there's something that's out of that pattern. So that's the anomaly detection. You've got data processing and interpretation, so just making sense of a lot of information, and then autonomous AI, which is independent decision making. So think about an algorithm where you can say, draw upon all of these things, and here's my decision making criteria. Can you tell me what that decision is? So these are some things that AI can do within an organization. And getting a little bit deeper into this. So when we think about how we look at jobs today, so as you can see on the left, one job can consist of different tasks and decisions. And to date, those tasks and decisions are done entirely by humans. But as we think about the capabilities that we just saw on the previous slide, we're also now seeing that some of those tasks and decisions that are done by humans today are actually better or more effectively or efficiently done by machine. So that is where we start to identify what parts of jobs can actually be best addressed with AI and what parts of jobs can be best addressed by humans. So what we're seeing the movement towards is a human machine collaboration. So imagine that, all of those things that humans do best, that's what's going to be comprising a human job. And then when we think about all the things that AI does best, that becomes the work of an AI job or an AI agent, if you will. So in the future, you might see these tasks and decisions being reconfigured into things that are clearly human and things that are in jobs that are clearly best done by machine agents. And so from an org design perspective, when we think about structure, on the right, you see this movement towards perhaps a leader, a human leader, managing a team of both humans and agents, and work being done in this kind of collaboration. And so in the org design community that has been exploring this, we've been talking about designing structures, designing operations and processes to this particular collaboration. And so we'll talk about the kind of shifts that makes, that leads us to. But what do we as OD practitioners, what do we have to know about AI? This sort of flips a lot of things that we know and practice on its head. So there's some core understandings that we have on the left side. And some of this Sepideh already alluded to. So number one assumption, AI runs on data. Data quality, structure, and access are critical. So if an AI agent does not have access to data, its decision making, its outputs will not be as effective, right? It's only as effective as the data that it has access to. Why that matters? So when we're thinking about how you design an organization that has AI agent jobs, you need to also make sure that the organization has the ability to give it access to the data that it needs to do those particular things. Otherwise, it won't perform well. It will probably fail, and it will probably be wrong a lot. So we have to think about this when we're talking about designing operations and org readiness. Another thing is AI is best at pattern recognition, prediction, and automation. So that means that tasks and decisions that are repetitive, rules-based, criteria-based, involve looking at and analyzing a large volume of data. Those are really great candidates of work that should be done by AI. So if you think about, the hours you might spend poring over data and doing the analysis yourself, some of that might actually be better done by AI. And this should make a lot of people feel better. AI cannot handle ethics, ambiguity, or the nuances that humans actually deal with. I like to use the example of, part of an org design. A lot of times I facilitate groups of leaders through decision making. There's a decision chain that helps us, for every decision has an implication on the org structure. And so a lot of times to prepare leaders for that decision, we have a fact pack. We have 3 different options that we're exploring. We're looking at pros and cons, and we have a recommendation, right? Based on everything that has to be done. And almost always there's a leader or 2, or maybe a bunch, that say, you know what? I don't like any of these options. Or I know that the data points us towards this option. I don't think we should do it, right? So when we think about the deviation, when we think about ambiguity, when we think about the nuance of making decisions, this is where AI cannot handle those decisions. So we think about humans, we have to remain central for judgment, relationship building, ethics, because ethics can be very nuanced and obscure, and culture shaping. So when we think about how all of those things come together, sometimes that's more of an art than it is a science. And AI isn't always going to be the best tool to do those kinds of things. AI, even though it's agentic, still needs human collaboration and oversight. Sepideh and I were just at a conference, and somebody was talking about, there's a company in Silicon Valley where somebody's sitting in front of giant screens, and they're basically talking to the screen as if it's a human, but they're talking to an AI. And so they're talking about, here are the particular things that I'm trying to decide on. Each decision is going to cost me money and budget to execute at the end. The AI is telling them, based on all of the data, here's the decision that should be made. If you want to make this decision, yes, and it's going to, you're going to have a, $500,000 budget. And so the person says, great, I want to do that. Can I have the $500,000 budget? And the AI says, yes, here's your allocation. Now, while that is possible, from a financial perspective, we're not always going to let AI make all of these decisions, then allocate budget according to its own rationale. So again, AI needs human collaboration and oversight. Somebody is going to have to say, yes, I'm okay with that allocation. So keep that in mind. It can do some things, but it still needs oversight, still needs validation. It needs sort of that contextualization to act on its outputs. And then not all AI integrations are ready or appropriate. I think a lot of people we're hearing about overinvestment right now. We're thinking about like, hey, we think that it can do everything, but we're not really sure. And so, there might be a little bit of an overinvestment at this point in time because we're not looking at what is ready or what is appropriate for context. So definitely remember, AI can do lots of things. It does not do everything.
And it can make mistakes.
Absolutely, it can make mistakes. We see that with ChatGPT all the time. Making things up, right? So critical mindsets for all of us here on this call. These are some traditional mindsets on the left and how we can actually sort of think about this or reframe this a little bit differently as we are designing organizations for AI. So the first being, focus on people and culture to improve performance. When we think about performance as a problem we're trying to solve, we're looking at people, we're looking at process, we're looking at the culture. A new mindset is that we're focusing not just on that, but on systems of work. So we're looking at not just the people and the culture and what their jobs are, but we're looking at how process flows and data flows and how AI can come in and help with that to drive this combination of human and organizational potential. Another thing is that we assume that work is designed and performed by humans. Obviously, that is something that we have to think about differently. So we assume that we have to redesign work for a human-machine collaboration. And then if you are a star model devotee, you might be designing things where structure follows strategy and then processes follow the people that are doing the work. So this is a little bit different. I'm going to turn the star model a little bit on its head and say that structure and processes must first follow data flows, value flows, capacity flows. So we're going to need to know about process before structure is a good way to think about that. In the past, tech was sort of an afterthought. How does it enable the structure? How does it enable the workflow? Now we're looking at how does tech actually facilitate and conduct this work? So it's a bit of an order shift when we think about that. And then we think about change, right? I think about ADKAR. I love to think about ADKAR, right? So change is about emotional acceptance and skill building. We want to do all the comms, we want to do all the training, and then we want to recognize resistance and address it, right? Change in this world now is about identity shifts because we're going to be talking about things that humans do that machines now do, and people are going to question, what do I do then? What is my identity? What is all that education and training that I have been through? What is that for? right? So when we think about change management on this, it's about identity shifts. It's about how to make decisions differently, and how do you reframe the purpose of a job versus just training and skill building, right? So in things like tools like job analysis, process mapping, those things are usually based on human workflows. Now we're talking about mapping tasks, decisions, data across humans and AI systems. So we're thinking about this a little bit. We have to open up our aperture a bit more and consider things that we have never had to consider before. I won't belabor this point, but our overall case approach to this was we wanted to go assess, design, change. That is not a different thing, but how we thought about each one of those things had to change. So when we think about assess, we're looking at what is the strategy, where are the problems and strengths within the organization, where does AI fit, and where is humanity critical? So when we're thinking about building out what jobs look like, we have to know what is human and we have to know what is machine. When we're thinking about design, we're designing work. We're not just designing jobs, boxes, lines. We are definitely looking at an overall workflow. And when we think about change, it's not really just about adoption. It's about adaptation. And so that is an entirely different conversation. And so when we think about something like ADKAR, I love ADKAR. D for desire is always the hardest thing to address. And this is almost this change management is very, very heavy on that D. So, okay, so let's look at the assessment.
Before we go over the assessments, I want to, take a moment and emphasize on this point that this was a special, project, and we were involved in designing a digital platform with AI integration capability. And we understand although this is an option for all of your organization, and we would be more than happy to, support you for it, but this is not, normally what you do. But a lot of things that we include in assessments will help you as an OD practitioner to guide and consult your organization for which AI is best for them, or what are the things that they need to include for the AI integration projects. So when we were looking at the AI, the assessments, considering all of those chaoses that they had in the organization and the platform, we consulted with Dr. Rachel, and one decision that we both were agreed on immediately was none of the assessment or standardized standards assessments will work independently, or we had to absolutely have a combination package, and also had to customize some of the assessment for the organization based on their goal and all of the problems and objective and goals that they had. So we had to, we had a holistic, view. And also, I am personally usually zoom in, zoom out, and going from different perspective to see, okay, what are things that we have to do, so we can get a full picture before we go onto the next stage of the process. So we design our assessment, and also so the goal and objective for our assessment was absolutely evaluating, okay, what are they now, what are they doing now, and what is functioning well, what is not functioning well. Do they have that capability of AI integration? And we had several conversations with the client about, okay, if you are going to integrate AI, what type of AI you're planning to integrate, because those were important as we were designing the data collection system. And if they wanted to become an AI factory, which I will explain later, that what it is. And that also, since we were designing a customized digital platform, the assessment helped us to kind of help them to redesign some of their operations, optimize it, and identify the gaps, misalignments, what works well, what doesn't work well, and the decision-making patterns, or what the executives wanted to see as a synchronized data decision, or data-driven decision outcome later when the platform is ready, and what are the the things that they wanted to change, or how they are willing to change the structure of the organization. So for that, the assessments, as I mentioned, although we had customized platform, but we also benefited a customized assessment, but we also benefited from the SWOT analysis, gap rate, model, as Rachel explained, Mackenzie, and also swim lane diagram, which helped us to kind of like put all of the the assessments information at the end of the day together, and then kind of like having a layout, a roadmap. But again, it was a very different assessment than a traditional one. We had to modify it, and we had to kind of like be innovative and creative and flexible, not binding ourselves with a specific system of assessments. And in terms of like a stakeholder, we had a limited accessibility, but so we targeted some of the important stakeholders. And also, like, I personally went over got an access demo to different levels of their platform, and like operated within the system as an staff, as a branch manager, as a client. So I understand, okay, what is working, what is not working. And one of the things that I analyzed, and this might quite be a surprise to you, but because of our limitation, this is where we became innovative. I analyzed the past 3 years customer reviews in the Yelp for all of their branches. So that helped us it was a extensive qualitative data analysis, but that helped us to get a really, really good insight from their customers that even the CEO or the franchise owners were blind to, and they never paid attention to those weaknesses or strengths expressed by their customers from different branches. Can you move? Yeah, I'll pass it to Rachel, because next slide is for Rachel.
Yeah, so one of the reasons that the assessment was much bigger, so as you think about, this is in part a little bit of a systems assessment for technology. So we're looking at what's the experience for all the different people that might touch this. So that's one. We're also looking at what are the issues that these stakeholders might be experiencing. So whether that's a customer, a location manager, the headquarters organization, what are some of the pain points that they might be experiencing where AI could potentially solve a problem, or a restructure could solve a problem. And so we found ourselves going much deeper on the strategy and external side, in addition to the like looking at the technical platform and looking at some of these decision making, the data flows, like the jobs that were existing around the system. So it really had to be a little bit more far-reaching than a normal assessment would. So to look at it, so the key characteristics of our assessment were AI readiness. So we did look at, past change experience, what's the response to that, what particularly might be some barriers to change. We made sure that it was multimodal. So we looked at we didn't just send out a survey, right? We did interviews, we had system observations, we did a lot of different things. We looked at both internal and external data sources, so within the company as well as in, outside of the company. And then we had a high emphasis on task and decision flow, because those are the things that AI can really come in here to solve. So there's a little bit of a comparison between our approach and a traditional org assessment. So our approach was really designed for transformation readiness. So this is very different, right? We usually do assessment to identify the issues, then we go in and we design what's changing, and then we do a different assessment for change. This is doing it a lot up front, so that we can start to get in front of where there might be roadblocks and why those roadblocks exist. We also looked at evaluating tech, people, process, data, all of the above, versus just people in org structure. We also did a tailored approach, non-standardized, because every company is going to be just a little bit different. So we're hoping to refine that one in the future, versus an off-the-shelf tool or model. we connected operational friction to platform efficiency. So when we think about what's happening, the problems that are within the operations, we want to fix that with the platform. And then we focused versus focusing more on the behavior and culture. We do that in addition to. And then we use that external consumer user data, and particularly for this organization, because that data tells us whether or not they're delivering on their strategy, versus just looking at metrics within the organization. Okay, so highlights on what we found, Sepideh.
Yeah, thank you so much. Considering the comprehensive assessment that we had, we also had, an unpredicted amount of information, which was quite surprise to us, but that helped us to design an ultimate solution for them. So one of the things that we learned that their operation was very, very different than their digital system that they had. So one of the things that for example, many of their many of the franchise branch owners told me that it's not only it's not helping us, but also it's kind of like a burden and time consuming, and I don't know why I have to do this. So a lot of the owners took the liberty to use a different, independent platform and paying for that so they can manage their operation. There were a lot of ethical issues, accessibility issues, very inconsistent dashboard. Almost customer had to manage their request traditionally by call or by text messages. There were even, some liability risk with their system, user frustration resistance. This was one of the really interesting lessons that I personally learned throughout this project is when you're going to, integrate a technology, it's better that you make your staffs feeling heard. So if they feel that, okay, you heard them, you know what are their problems and how you can address those problems, that helps them to reduce, that resistance that you might get down the road. But if you just go them and say, hey, I'm asking about this so I can, give you a new system, and they will react, oh my gosh, you're putting extra job on me. But you need to help them to understand, okay, you are intervening so you can help them to have an easier life. Another thing that, we were, involved, and I understand that usually OD practitioners are not involved, but I personally had different sets of training besides my education at Alliant about AI and, kind of like how to design an AI system from very technical perspective. So one of the things that we also, learned that, okay, their system and their data collection system is absolutely not ready for integrating AI. So we needed to kind of cover that part too. About the roles, there was a lot of, their system was kind of like everyone was using one access level. So we needed to kind of include that in our design that, okay, different roles and what each role is supposed to do. So it's kind of like a modular design that you design different levels of accessibility and different level of function. And this is where our OD, skills came in to help us negotiate those details and help the CEOs to see the blind spot of what happens if you go by the technical preference, because technicians have a different preference, and your job would be a lot involved in, okay, when they are saying we want to start from this point, how does that integrate the organization? Because they wanted to start from the franchise owner, dashboard so they could satisfy their franchise owner, but we needed to help them. We needed to help them understand that, okay, no, that is not what you wanted to do, because these are the problems that you will face as as a big organization. And that's your job as an OD practitioner, to put yourself in different shoes and see, okay, how does that impact the organization? And then also, one of the things that we had to, consider based on our finding was scalability. This was a very big organization and they had many different functions. So the roadmap that at the end of the day we provided to them was actually a 2 years design, which included from, you know, assessment all the way down to the full implementation. And we had to consider different phases and who are the priorities that need to, you know, get that options first, or how do we, you know, scale up? What are the cohorts that's supposed to get those, you know, AI accessibilities? What are the trainings that they're supposed to get? And we even, you know, had to consider the KPIs and other predictable, you know, formulas or consideration that we wanted to see. So that assessment findings helped us to understand all of those details. But again, these were the things that I was involved as a person who is doing an, you know, AI technical design. You don't need to, as an OD practitioner, to think about those, but these are the things that you want to, you know, kind of like pay attention or be creative or, you know, curious when you're consulting your organization about integrating AI and how it might impact your organization.
Yeah. And just to add on to that, Sepideh, like one of the things that, especially when we look at a franchise organization, so I want you to imagine a franchise retail location where they have retail and they have service. And so when we think about how they interact with this platform, it's to facilitate things like scheduling, point of sale, sales reports, all of those kinds of things, how their client management, all of and all of those pieces. And so when we look at the role of a franchise owner, the role of a manager, the role of a service provider in this location, or a sales associate, they're you know, they're interacting with the system that doesn't really serve each one of those roles in a different way. It's sort of a peanut butter spread. And in an organization like this, the folks that are at that retail level, they just want to provide their service. That's the thing that they love. And what was frustrating for them was, you know, having to go through all of these processes with no clear or optimized way to use this system. It was actually making their lives harder. And I know that there was a question in the chat. So Annie, you know, when we think about desire, one of the great things about doing this up front and really assessing the history of change, the pain points, and listening to all these people in their different roles, part of that is, you know, can you create the message that doing this will actually alleviate a lot of their stresses and problems? And so really thinking about how you solve for folks, and also listening to what might be hard to move through. And so yes, we wanted to start that listening and assessment process up front so that we can continually manage it through the process. And then as we think about designing the system, we involve them in that design so that they feel bought in. So that is a way to keep our pulse on that constantly changing desire. Hope that answers your question. Okay, so how do we use this in design and change? So in org design, we all we know the STAR model. I hope many of you are familiar with it if you are doing org design work. So we know that it is the connectivity of these 5 elements within an organization. And it's a little bit the butterfly effect, right? You change one, it's going to impact another. From a design perspective, we tend to move clockwise. So we start with strategy as a point of entry. What are you trying to do as an organization? Then we go to structure. How do we structure all of that work, decision-making process, and boxes and lines around that? Then what's the process that supports that particular structure, and so on and so forth until we get to rewards and people, which can be sort of the kind of talent that we place in that structure. So very, very classic, wonderful tool for org design, and I love it and I use it. And in this case, it was not necessarily enough. And so we had to shift the STAR model a little bit. So when we think about like going back to AI capabilities, we had to start with that, with capabilities, which is the work. So when we think about how tasks, decisions, process, technology, and data flow from input to output, across a value chain. So think about, a Porter's value chain where you have outlined all of the work of an organization, starts with inputs, goes to outputs, delivery to your client, to your customer. It's the work of the organization. And what we normally think about first is sort of what's the work, but then how do you structure the work? In this case, we had to think about what's the work and how does process come in? How does technology come in? How does data flow? And how do humans come in, right? So we were looking at that combination within capabilities first, which is not normally what we might do. And so once we get that, we then move in, we then would need to look at structure and how you structure the jobs that then go into that, and how human and agentic roles are going to be structured to facilitate the process and facilitation of that work, and how integration comes forward. And then we move into people. I know we like to separate out people and rewards, but as we think about, people, we're really looking at people strategy. So it's the workforce plans, talent management. How do you get the right people in the right roles at the right time? What are you looking for from an acquisition perspective? How do you place them? How do you develop them, right? Like, the development is a huge part of this because you're looking at different skills, different roles, different augmentation, and rewards in that bucket. So you're not looking at rewards separately from people, you're looking at that people strategy altogether. So our design approach, when we moved through the capability structure people in that order, and then we are looking at how each of those aligns to strategy, everything. So we really have to, when we're working with clients, speak the language of the problems, which is why we went so deep in the assessment on what's working, what's not working in your process, in your operations, in what your customers are saying. We really needed to look at how is your strategy being delivered? Is it being delivered in the way that you want it to be? In this case, our client was saying, we actually we need to make more revenue. We need to make more revenue against our goals. And then looking at culture, like what's the culture in there and how is it reinforcing and supporting the things that you're trying to do? So we tried to shift the STAR model a little bit. So we went future oriented. We're looking for AI augmentation and scalability. So you're designing today, but you're sort of thinking of this as like an always on system that you're constantly getting feedback loops from, and you're constantly evaluating, and how you can use AI in order to give you that information so that you can shift as necessary real time. We're not just looking at current state and alignment with strategy, which the STAR model usually has us do. And we're looking at, like I said, task, data, and decision flow. We're not just looking at alignments between the 5 points. And we're being iterative and modular about it. So Sepideh mentioned that it had to be a phased change because there's parts of this organization that we needed to build first, including the data infrastructure, before we even got to changing the rules. And then we're looking at user experience, tech infrastructure, these things that we wouldn't normally look at when it comes to org design. So it's a part OD, part UX, part systems design versus something that's purely an org design strategy alignment model. Jonathan?
There are 3 questions in chat, and I think they're all related to this slide. And I think they will be fruitful to hear your perspective on them.
Yeah, so I see, how do you define the work?
I
Yeah,
think
so
those are,
oh, go ahead.
I think some of them are already answered, in the next slides, maybe. Yeah, okay, go ahead.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's always the interesting thing. So when we think about, I can get very technical about when we define the work. Has anybody in this room looked at business architecture or organization capability maps or a Porter's value chain? Anybody? So usually those things are more in the camp of our strategy folks who are at the organization. When I look at the work, so if you look at a Porter's, if you Google or use ChatGPT to look up what is a Porter's value chain, you're going to see that there's primary activities that basically like production, sales, marketing, those kinds of things that actually are taking your inputs and creating the output that you sell to a customer or you deliver to a customer. And then there's the secondary work, which is things like usually, HR is in there, tech is in there, finance is in there. These are sort of these enabling functions, enabling work. as we get deeper in that, I am a capabilities-based org designer in that I take each one of those things and I break them down into all the different tasks and activities and things that need to occur in order to deliver on each part of that business. And so that's how I would consider work. So for example, for like financial analysis could be the work, and the different viewpoint on this, using AI is you're actually having to look at, when you need to say financial analysis, there's the work that a human needs to do, the tasks and decisions. There's the work that an AI agent would do. There's other technology and how that supports, and there's a process by which that work gets done. And how do those, and the data that you need in order to do that work. So how do those 5 things, what's the relationship between those 5 things for financial analysis? That would be the way I define the work. Does that answer the question?
Lisa and Trisha, maybe you can,
Yes, thank you.
okay, great.
Great. It is a very, I'm an org design nerd, so that was a very deep and technical org design answer. So thank you for bearing with me. Okay. All right. So in terms of design approach, so when we think about the assessment, I know there was a question about how we hand that off. One of the big steps after we conducted the assessment is we delivered the results. So we said, here's what we found. And we did a presentation for the main stakeholder. And then based on that, we said, here's what we recommend from a design perspective. So the design approach. So we wanted to build this for AI readiness. We wanted to create a user-centered experience. So going back to, we figured out all of the problems that the end users would be experiencing, mostly actually in the franchisee locations. And some of those actually also applied to the owner-owned locations. And so when we think about, like, when you have a franchise, they sort of hand you a manual and say, here's how you operate your franchise. And some of those problems still existed regardless of whether it was owned by the organization or whether it was owned by a franchisee. So we looked at all of those problems that came from those process flows, decisions, activities, and what their strategic opportunities were in terms of increasing revenue. And we said, here's what we think we could do from a design perspective, specifically around AI, in order to alleviate those issues. So we really tried to use a user-centered approach there. We had to build the AI first. So when we think about how this is very different from org design, is if we're considering the work first, and we expect that we need to identify what AI can do to alleviate those pain points and work more effectively, efficiently, we sort of have to start there. We had to start with the assumption that we're going to look at what's AI, and then what is the space where humanity is more critical. So we had to design for the AI first. And when we do that, like we said, AI is entirely dependent on data. So we needed to look at the work that AI could do and what data it needed to do that work. And so that was our design approach. Is so before we start, so we looked at strategy as part of our assessment. Then coming through strategy, we went and looked at what is the work so that we can identify where AI can be a great tool and where humans would take on other work. And then we had to, instead of designing, usually we would go to structure. Instead, we had to go to designing the AI. And so that is where things had to be completely iterative. So as we're designing the AI, we have to test it and pilot it. And then as we test and pilot, then we're shifting the design on the jobs around it, if that makes sense. And so we used many things in order to detail that out. Sepideh did all of this wonderful work. And so in order to get us there. So we use design principles around, like I said, user centricity. So I think we're not trying to design tech for tech's sake. We are designing an AI-powered system, an AI-powered platform to alleviate the work of humans. So it's a different way to think about it. So we have to be user-centric about it. Our end users are always going to be voices that we need to hear. Operational coherence, does it actually fit with operations? Like, we're not going to build these AI tools if it doesn't actually make sense for the organization. It should not cost you more than you need it to cost. It should not take you more time. I think there was an example where somebody had to like spend hours just babysitting the AI. That's probably a place where AI doesn't need to be. Right. So we're looking at operational coherence. How does it align? Is it scalable? Right. You don't want to be building these things over and over again. You want something that is AI learns, right? So how can it continue to learn and scale? With readiness from the organization. Again, like there was an example in the chat from somebody earlier where, there's AI tools, people don't know how to use it. It's actually like creating a lot more hurdles than it clears. And so readiness might not have been considered in that space either. So that's where phasing of that implementation, both in org and technology, could be really helpful. And then at the end of the day, from a strategy perspective, whatever we design structurally within the organization or technologically within the operations, it needs to enable revenue growth. And that was super clear. And that's going to be clear for every organization, is if it's not enabling growth, every organization, unless you're talking about an NGO, but like in order to deliver its mission, it has to be profitable. And so whatever we're doing has to enable that revenue growth for the organization in the way that they want it to grow. And so we focused on first the dashboard and interface redesign. So we had to go tech first. We had to look at the data infrastructure and improvements we needed to make in order to design the dashboard, in order to collect data and make efficient the work in those franchise locations. And then we would design the process and the workflow. We would shift the process and workflow alignment around it, and then redesign the jobs and roles after that. And then it would need to be iterative, where we would talk about feedback loops. So because of the time limitation of 3 months, it was a lot to do to do this initial piece of assessment, as well as like designing the dashboard. And Sepideh did a really great job of doing a phased roadmap. So there's only so far you can get in the phasing in 3 months. So it was really just the beginning of, let's do the data and the data architecture and the actual dashboard that you need in order to enable even the AI. So those were things that's how far we got in those first 2 steps.
Thanks. Okay. Enough about our project, which I'm pretty sure was like 2 details for you. But now the next, few slides is what you need to pay attention as OD practitioner, because these are the slides that kind of like help you to sit with the executives and help them to make that decision. I'm pretty sure you so far understood that we designed a customized platform for our client so they could collect the data in a way that they wanted, operationalize it and process it based on their own operation, so customized for the organization, and then also get the insights from the data in a way that they desire to. That is what we call it AI Factory. So AI Factory is technically AI systems that, gets the data in, process it, more data comes in, better algorithm developed, because you kind of illuminate those blind spots, better services you can provide. And that is based on the more usage. So as you use it, you produce the data. Those data can help you to see, okay, what operations go wrong, what we can do, but we're not doing, what are services that we can offer. I usually use the example of Amazon. Amazon is perhaps the best AI factory on the world, because they started as a bookstore and now they are, coming up as pharmacy store or, grocery store, supply chain, and they get all of those from the customers' data. So they can, make decisions based on those data that they get from the customers and from their employees. But in order to have an AI factory, you need to have data pipeline. This is something that, as an OD practitioner, absolutely, I'm assuming that you're not, doing it in-house, because you need to kind of go external and have someone to do the project. And that's what I suggest, have a partnership to someone come in and get it done for you. But even if you're an in-person OD, you want to have that conversation. Okay, what are the data that I want to see at the end of the day? What are the things that I want to know? What data is that this system can collect for me? And then also how does that feedback loop works? And who will be, involved in fitting these data and getting the outcome of these data. But this means that, okay, you need to have a customized platform. And what we will explain here is, I'm pretty sure you guys, how many of you, I have heard a lot of HR departments have already, integrated some AIs. Anyone has integrated AI in their organization for a specific department? I cannot see the hands, but I assume some of you are. So when you're going and purchasing a prepared platform, perfect, Bafa. So when you're going out and purchasing a different platform, you're technically using someone else's AI factory. So you have the opportunity to become an AI factory for your organization, no matter how big it is or how small it is. It is better to become an AI factory, and I will explain in a next two slides that what are the benefits. But when you are using a preprep platform, you're technically creating disparate data in your organization. So you can absolutely go that platform is only working for data specific organization. This system, think it in this way. It is your digital and virtual workplace, and it's everything designed based on your organization. And as a CEO, you have that option to, let's assume that you want to have some financial synchronized data. You will have that, dashboard, because it's been designed and the system collects the data in that way. It is a one time for all time solution, but it's been designed for yourself, for your organization. That's an AI factor. You get the data and then you process the data in a way that you want to, and then you also can, add up to the options. But when you go with the, prepaid platforms, you are limited to their options and to the data that they collect. In the next slide, we'll have, more about the benefits, but can we go to the data? Next one. With that being said, again, data is everything. You're technically making money out of your data. So when we're saying that when we're talking about industrializing the data, and in the era of AI, data will be everything. You want to go when you're, purchasing a prepaid platform, you want to go and see all of those details in, the terms and conditions about what they will do with those data. We're technically saying, okay, so systematically collecting data, process them and kind of turning them to the revenue. Data collection will become important. You want to also, have a system that, collect structured and unstructured data. I was consulting a transportation business. And one of the conversation that we had with the AI integration, now they can even, transcribe all of their drivers' conversation with the clients. And that they were like, oh, this is the best thing that I can do. So I can go and review and, okay, what are the things that they discuss, so I can, benefit from those data about redesigning our routes. And about the data labeling is technically saying that what are the inputs and what are the outputs. That's not what you will be involved in, but you want to know, so you can ask about the outputs. And if you are going with an AI factory system, then yes, you want to kind of get involved with the data labeling. And data pipeline, that is very, technical. Without, it's best that you understand about, you have heard, the word, and, if someone brings it up to you, but that's technically discussing how the data will be, processed and normalized in the technical part. Can we go to the next slide, please?
Yeah. Before we move, I just wanted to give people an idea of what we talk about when we're talking about data. So, we think about self-report data. So in an HRIS system, right, you're keying in data from people's forms, from people's job history, all of those kinds of things. but there's also behavioral data. So AI can cross different platforms if you give it access. So things like badge swipes, keystrokes, how many people are asking questions about change in Slack, right? This is all data that an AI agent can pull from. So it's not really just the analysis of structured data, but it's also this behavioral data that it can infer. So just wanted to throw that out there because
I'm
sometimes.
glad that Rachel mentioned it, because one of the things that I did was I created a directory of what they had in the digital platform and what they were doing, two separate directory for their operations, and then walked through each of them
No,
and okay,
I reply.
how we can move each of them around, and what are things that are missing, or what are the things that it's there but it's not supposed to be there. So you also, as an OD practitioner, wants to understand what are the data that your organization is collecting and what are the ones that you're not collecting but you want to, and if the AI that you're kind of like integrating into your system is helping you with that part or not. Can we go to the next slide? Okay, so benefiting of becoming an AI factory, I added this slide because I was, assuming that, okay, so like a CEO calls me and say, okay, I want to integrate AI, and how we do that or who we should go to. So first you need to rule out with them that, okay, if they want to go with a prepared platform, or no, they want to go to someone like Sepideh and, get an AI factory customized for their operation. AI Factory gives you that option to become they have that customized, platform, doing better data-driven decision, because absolutely you can synchronize the data based on your operation. You're not redesigning your operations. You are designing a platform based on your operation. With the prepared platform, one of the downsides that it has is like you're limited to their operations or how they function for the roles or anything that you use for. You're also giving up your rights to the intellectuality and also the money that you can make off of your data. So the moment that you use the prepared platform, I'm pretty sure you have heard in all of their system that they own the ownership of the data. With the with the AI factory, you have that option to off-label many of the data, so making it, legally sellable and put it on the data banks. For the organization that we worked with, my, kind of like quick estimate was they could make hundreds of thousands of dollars every year from those data that they were collecting, because they also had some behavioral data and some, healthcare data. You can also, with the prepared platform, you should go, with the disparate data, which means that, okay, so your data will be limited to each department or each rule that it's using. But with the AI platform, again, you can synchronize those data or decide, okay, what are the factors that I want to combine for making A, B, C, D decisions. So it is in the cost, consideration part. Yes, you pay more at the beginning, but down the road it's less. And then also, since you're customizing a platform, you have that option to send some people home, or using some labor costs, or reinvesting that money for different operations. So when you're going with a prepared platform, it's technically making your staff's jobs easier. You want to ask, okay, why I am using this. Am I using it for more profitability? My personal consultation with different organization who are using the prepared platforms is they actually have put in extra burden to their financial costs. And now, yes, the efficiency is better, but, staff have more time. So those are all of the things that you also need to consider, that, okay, with the AI that I'm bringing into my organization, how does that impact my organization? And then is it the best option that I have, or what different platforms are offering me? And again, so with that AI factory one, you have that option to scale up as you're processing through, you can design it based on your, CEO's preferences. But you absolutely, yes, you need to have someone to, come in like us. That's what we're doing with Dr. Rachel. We do the assessments, we work with the technicians, because you absolutely have to have that interdisciplinary skills to kind of have that conversation with them to design the system for you. And then what are the change managements? And it's best to have someone in-house to work with those external vendors for in-house change management and implementation. But if you still decide to go with the prepared platform, it's absolutely, okay. But you just need to know, what are you gaining and what are you losing? And I would absolutely pay attention to the data that those systems will collect, and what I can do with those data, or what are the data that they are collecting. How does that impact your operations? How it impacts your structure, and is it really what you want to do? And is that really helping your organization? If yes, to what extent? Or you're just saying that, okay, good, we are AI upgraded, and so we're kind of like up to date. With the AI era, I also wanted to, raise this awareness for everyone, that there would be most outdated than updated because as you are catching up, things are already old. With the AI Factory, you have that option to kind of have a customized platform, and just benefiting from the AI technology to make what you want out of those platforms. So it's not going to be outdated platform. But with the prepared platform, or using different version of AIs for different departments or different operation, you would have that problem, because every day as we are progressing, as they are learning more about the AI, there will be a new platform and new functions and a different one. And I, as a person who have worked with different organizations for digitalization and digital transformation, I can assure you that would be a very, a hard challenge for the organization. And you need to be cautious about how you build up those resistance with the, technology adaptation. And I'll pass the ground to Rachel for the last 2 slides.
Yeah. So, so when we're thinking about AI factories, if you're in the org space, I highly recommend considering it as a design element as you're designing an operating model or designing an organization, because there's a lot of ways that it can help both small businesses and large organizations. So when we think about how creating an AI factory in your design, how it helps small businesses, think about, these are folks that are scrappy. They don't have a lot of people, a volume of people to do work. So and they likely have a lot of data potentially that they're dealing with. It can simplify the complexity that comes from handling your data. It can improve your decision-making speed, recommendations for what you do in your business. Reduces reliance on, especially for small business. And I can say I'm a consultant, and I'm an independent consultant. I'm a consultant. I'm a company of one, right? Expensive headcount, people I would normally outsource things to, I potentially can use or design an agent, which I do, to do certain things in my business. So think about how you can reduce reliance on things that are expensive, especially when you're small. And then it can scale with you. You can always add in more humans. You can always, or you can scale the technology, but it allows you to grow at your own pace. And it can level the competitive playing field. So things that I can do on my own might be comparable with a bigger consulting firm sometimes, because I have tools now that can be my agents to do certain things. For large organization, you can use it to standardize things. You can actually create cross-functional collaborations. If you are an org design nerd in this room, you have a matrixed organization. A lot of times the lateral links that really power up those nodes, or integration, right? Sometimes we create roles that are designed to just integrate everything. Sometimes you can actually use AI to do the integration, to make sure that the data, they're all singing from the same song sheet, right, in a matrix organization. So there's ways to scale it and provide value in that way. Amplifying efficiency gains through process, and then supporting enterprise scale data governance and ethics. So you can actually support like the controls or the compliance that you might have in place through an AI agent. So there's different ways it can serve both sides of the organization. And I want to point out, so Sepideh brought up something that was interesting around, like, do you use it a prepaid or do you build your own? I think about a prepaid being like, go out and get a service, but you've got to design your organization, your data structure, and your operations around how that service works. If you were to build that within your own organization, you might not have to restructure. You might not have to redo your processes. So it might be an investment in the actual AI factory that saves the work and the structure and the jobs versus having to restructure and retool like every part of your operations to fit a technology. So that's something to consider as well as a design element. Sepideh, would you be okay if I just sort of fast forwarded into change at a high level?
Yeah, absolutely. Go ahead.
Okay. So when we think about change management, I touched on this at the beginning, thinking about putting these things into place. It really isn't just an adoption play. It really gets at this idea around like people are hearing things in the news about how AI is replacing people. People are scared. Like think about the conversations you had at the beginning of this presentation. So there's something about really looking at the identity shift. So people have been trained in certain areas and maybe half of their job can now be done by AI. What is my point? What is the point of my role? So really getting into that piece of it, that level of humanity and change, that desire, what's really causing resistance in me, that's going to be really important because it's not just going to be about let's train people how to use AI. It can't just be that because we have to get over this hurdle of our jobs and how we look at work changing. And the trust in the system. So this particular organization, you think about like past tech failures had really eroded the trust within their organization. And trust with AI is already going to be super low. And so how do you build operations and communications and really have leaders get in there to start to build that trust? So when we think about the humanity within change, this requires more humanity, not less. So, I mean, so those are some of the things. We didn't quite get to the change approach. We assessed it, but we didn't get to, because of where we were in the project, we didn't get to actually go in and do it. But some shifts in approach would be, co-create early. So as you're designing the change, usually we throw it over to change after we're done designing. Now, we got to bring that forward. We have to be starting to build that coalition through design. We're going to build with the end user. We're going to talk to the end user. We're going to have them help us pull it all the way through so that we're building change agents from the beginning. And at the same time, building AI literacy, building those capabilities. So it's not just abandoning everything we've known about change. It's keep some of it and let's bring it forward. So we will, at the end of this, so there's just a lot of different mindset shifts that we could walk you through. But if we're leaving you with one message, it's about just remember that AI doesn't replace your role as OD practitioners or org designers. It actually elevates it. So think about how there are pieces of your role that could be best done by machines. And then how does that increase your ability to provide value in other ways and to start to think of you and an agent collaborating to make you a better practitioner, and do the same thing at work. Our job is now to reshape work, reshape structures, and really reshape identity to unlock the full potential of what it means to be in harmony between humans and machines. So it's a big role we can play. We have a selection of slides, including some of the ones that we didn't get to, that are available for you to download. So if you can snap a picture of that QR code or use that link and type in the code OD in AI, that should give you some slides from today. It's also going to ask you a few questions. Sepideh and I get better with feedback. We love feedback. So please take the time 2 seconds to answer just a couple questions about what you thought about our presentation today. And then you will be rewarded with some downloads at the end.